The Prisoner's Gambit. Lieutenant Marcus Reed's shoulders ached from the energy restraints binding his arms behind his back, but he refused to show weakness as the guards dragged him through the crystalline corridors of the Calorie warship. 3 months since the battle at Titan Station. 3 months since his crew had been decimated defending Earth's mining colonies, and today marked his first appearance before their commander. The throne chamber doors dissolved into shimmering particles, revealing a space that seemed carved from violet crystal. At least 40 Calorie officers lined the walls, their gray skin marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with silent communication. But Marcus's attention fixed on the figure seated at the chamber's center. Commander Rena rose from her elevated platform, and Marcus understood why humans had nicknamed her the Amethyst. Her skin held a deep purple luminescence, different from her gray-skinned warriors, as though she'd been crafted from the same material as her ship. Silver-white hair cascaded down her back, woven with circuitry that glowed softly at her temples. "This is the human who destroyed our supply convoy," announced General Tavros, his voice thick with contempt. "The one responsible for delaying our advance by 6 standard cycles." Rena descended the steps with fluid precision, each movement purposeful and graceful. "So, Earth trains its officers well," she said, her accent musical despite speaking perfect English. "You fight with desperation but also with intelligence, Lieutenant Reed, a rare combination." Marcus met her silver eyes directly, refusing to look away. "We fight for survival, Commander, not desperation." A ripple of surprise moved through the assembled officers. Apparently, prisoners didn't usually speak so boldly. "Survival," Rena repeated, circling him slowly. "Your species clings to that word as though it justifies your resistance. Yet you must understand the inevitability of your defeat. The Calorie have absorbed 17 planetary systems. Earth will be no different. Maybe, but we'll make you remember us." Rena stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the faint iridescence in her skin, the way her eyes held flecks of violet among the silver. "You have earned acknowledgement from my officers, Lieutenant Reed. They speak of your tactical abilities with grudging respect. In Calorie tradition, we honor worthy adversaries before their fate is sealed." General Tavros stepped forward eagerly. "Commander, the traditional punishment for—" Rena silenced him with a raised hand. "I invoke the right of Carthal, the ancient privilege," she announced to the chamber. "Lieutenant Reed, for your valor in battle, you may request one boon before sentencing. Choose wisely." The chamber fell silent. Marcus felt the weight of every alien gaze upon him. He'd studied Calorie customs during the war, knew this was meant as a final gesture before execution. They expected him to ask for an honorable death or perhaps a message sent to Earth. Instead, Marcus straightened, despite the restraints, and spoke clearly. "I choose you, Commander." The reaction was instantaneous. Officers shouted in their native tongue, hands moving toward weapons. General Tavros lunged forward before 2 guards restrained him. The chamber erupted into controlled chaos. But Commander Rena stood perfectly still, her expression frozen between shock and something else Marcus couldn't identify. Then, slowly, her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Fascinating," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade, silencing everyone. "You continue to surprise me, human." Her silver eyes studied him with renewed intensity. "Guards, escort Lieutenant Reed to the detention wing. I will consider this request." As they pulled him toward the exit, Marcus glanced back one final time. Commander Rena watched him with an expression that had shifted from cold authority to genuine intrigue. Something had changed in that moment, a crack in the armor of conquest. He'd gambled everything on one audacious choice. Now, he could only wait to see if it would save his life or seal his fate. Unexpected curiosity. 5 days passed in the detention wing with no word from Commander Rena. Marcus spent his time studying the guards' routines, mapping the ship's subtle vibrations, planning escapes he knew were impossible. Then, on the 6th morning, everything changed. "The commander requests your presence," a guard announced, deactivating his cell's energy barrier. "You will accompany us immediately." They led him through sections of the ship he hadn't seen before, past laboratories where Kalari scientists worked with holographic displays, through gardens where alien plants grew under artificial sunlight. Finally, they arrived at a chamber with walls that seemed made of living starlight. Commander Rena stood at a massive curved window displaying the cosmos beyond. She'd traded her formal armor for simpler attire, a fitted suit that still carried military precision but felt less ceremonial. When she turned, Marcus noticed the absence of her usual entourage. "Lieutenant Reed," she said, dismissing the guards with a gesture. "I have decided your fate." Marcus's heart hammered, but he kept his expression neutral. "I'm listening." "Your request violated every protocol," Rena began, pacing slowly. "The High Council demanded your immediate execution. General Tavros has called for public trial." She paused, studying him. "Yet, I find myself curious about something." "What's that?" "Why?" she asked simply. "Why choose me when you could have requested anything? Freedom, mercy, a quick death. Instead, you made the one choice guaranteed to cause maximum disruption." Marcus considered his words carefully. "Where I come from, Commander, power and position often isolate people. Everyone sees the rank, the authority, the uniform, but they forget there's a person underneath." He held her gaze. "I chose you because I wanted you to see me as Marcus, not just as your enemy. And I wanted to see if you could be Rena, not just the conqueror." Something flickered across her features, surprise perhaps, or recognition. She moved to a console and activated a holographic display showing Earth from orbit, blue and green and heartbreakingly beautiful. "I have conquered 12 worlds, Lieutenant," she said, quietly. "I have heard the desperate pleas of 100 species, begging for mercy, offering tributes, cursing my name." She turned to face him. "But no one has ever simply asked to know me." "Is that so terrible?" "It's dangerous," Rena replied. "The Kalari engineered emotions out of our leadership caste generations ago. We are designed for efficiency, strategy, conquest." Her hand moved unconsciously to her temple, where the circuitry glowed softly. "Yet since your request, I find myself wondering about things that should not concern me." "Like what?" "Like why a human would face certain death with defiance instead of fear," she said, stepping closer. "Like what makes your species fight so desperately for something as abstract as freedom?" She was near enough now that Marcus could see the subtle patterns in her purple skin, like constellations. Like what it would mean to see someone as an equal rather than a subordinate or enemy. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. "Maybe those questions are worth exploring." "Perhaps," Rena agreed. "Which is why I have decided to assign you as my cultural consultant. You will attend me daily, answer my questions about human civilization, help me understand your species' psychological patterns." She returned to her console, her tone becoming more formal. "This arrangement satisfies Korthal tradition while maintaining appropriate boundaries." "So I'm not being executed?" "Not immediately," she said with the faintest hint of amusement. "Consider yourself uniquely valuable for research purposes." "And what happens when your research is complete?" Her fingers paused over the holographic controls. "I don't know," she admitted, the honesty seeming to surprise even her. "That uncertainty is itself unusual for me." Over the following days, Marcus found himself spending hours in Rena's command center, a private space filled with tactical displays and cultural archives from across her conquered territories. Their conversations began with formal questions about human military strategy, but gradually shifted to something more personal. "Explain this concept," Rena said, one evening displaying an image of two humans holding hands. "This physical connection, it serves no tactical purpose, yet humans engage in it frequently." Marcus smiled. "It's called affection, Commander. Physical touch releases chemicals in our brains that create feelings of comfort and connection." "Chemicals," she repeated, as though reducing it to biology made it safer. "The Kalari eliminated such dependencies." "Did you eliminate them or just suppress them?" Rena's silver eyes narrowed. "You presume much, Lieutenant." "I'm just observing," Marcus said carefully. "You ask me here to understand humans, but maybe you're also trying to understand yourself." She was silent for a long moment, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in what Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. "When I look at Earth," she finally said, "I see a world worth preserving, not just conquering. That thought should not occur to me." "Why not?" "Because it suggests weakness," Rena replied. "Compassion is inefficient. Mercy is strategic foolishness." Marcus stood slowly, aware he was taking a risk. Or maybe those are the things that make victory meaningful. Their eyes met across the holographic display of Earth. For the first time since his capture, Marcus saw past the commander's armor to something vulnerable underneath. And in that moment, he realized they were both prisoners. Him in her ship, her in the expectations of her people.
Breaking protocols. 3 weeks of daily sessions had transformed the dynamic between them. Marcus no longer wore restraints in Rena's presence, and their conversations had evolved from interrogations into genuine exchanges. Tonight, she'd summoned him to her private observatory, a chamber that resembled the inside of a crystalline geode. "Tell me about human courtship rituals," Rena said, her back to him as she adjusted the stellar projections above them. "Your data archives show elaborate processes, gifts, shared meals, verbal declarations of intent." Marcus moved closer, watching starlight play across her purple skin. "It's how we show someone they matter to us, that we're willing to invest time and effort into knowing them." "Inefficient," she replied, but her tone lacked conviction. "The Kalari arrange partnerships based on genetic optimization. And is that satisfying?" Rena turned to face him. "Satisfaction is irrelevant to reproduction." "I wasn't asking about reproduction," Marcus said softly. "I was asking about satisfaction." Her bioluminescent patterns flickered rapidly, indicating agitation. "You overstep, Lieutenant." "Do I?" he challenged gently. "Or are you just uncomfortable with the question?" Before she could respond, alarms shrieked through the ship. Rena's command console erupted with urgent messages in the Kalari language. Her expression hardened instantly back into military commander. "Rebel faction," she said, her fingers flying over holographic controls. "They've breached the ship's lower decks. Stay here." "I'm a trained soldier, Commander. Let me help." "You're a prisoner." "I'm someone who doesn't want you hurt." Their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them. Rena made a decision that would likely horrify her officers. She tossed Marcus a neural disruptor from her weapons cache. "Stay close," she commanded. "If you betray this trust, I will kill you myself." "Understood." They moved through the corridors as explosions rocked the ship. Rena fought with lethal precision, her movements fluid and deadly. Marcus covered her flanks, his military training returning instantly. They worked together with surprising synchronization, anticipating each other's movements as though they'd fought side by side for years rather than minutes.
A rebel emerged from a side passage, weapon aimed directly at Rena's back. Marcus reacted without thinking, throwing himself between them. The energy blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Pain exploded through his body as he hit the deck. "Marcus!" Rena's voice carried genuine fear. She eliminated the rebel with 2 precise shots, then dropped beside him. "You fool! Why would you—" "Still need those daily conversations," Marcus managed through gritted teeth. Her hands moved over his wound with surprising gentleness, applying a medical gel from her suit. "This is beyond foolish. You're my prisoner. You should have let me—" "What, die? That's not who I am, Rena." She froze at his use of her name without the title. Her silver eyes searched his face, and Marcus saw the moment her carefully constructed walls began to crack. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered, but her hands remained gentle on his injury. "Probably not, but I don't regret it." Security forces arrived moments later, securing the area and escorting them both to the medical bay. As Kalari medics worked on Marcus's shoulder, Rena stood in the doorway, watching with an expression that troubled her officers. Later that night, after the ship had been secured and the rebels captured, Rena appeared in Marcus's recovery room. She had dismissed the guards, a breach of protocol that would surely be reported. "The medical officer says you'll recover fully," she said, standing at the foot of his bed. "Good to know. Does this mean I can keep my consulting position?" "Marcus," she said his name carefully, as though testing its weight, "what you did today, it complicates everything." "How so?" She moved closer, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with emotions she'd been taught to suppress. "Because now I must acknowledge what I've been denying for weeks. You've made me feel things my people engineered away. Concern, curiosity, something I don't have words for in any language." Marcus sat up carefully, ignoring the protest from his injured shoulder. "Maybe that's not a flaw, Rena. Maybe that's just being alive." "The High Council meets tomorrow," she said, her tone shifting to something more vulnerable than she'd heard before. "They demand your execution. General Tavros has documented every protocol violation, every moment we've spent together. They call it contamination, weakness. And what do you call it?" Rena was silent for a long moment. Her silver eyes reflected the soft lights of the medical bay. "I call it terrifying," she admitted, "because if they execute you, I will lose something I never knew I wanted. And if I protect you, I risk everything I've built." Marcus extended his uninjured hand toward her, a simple gesture that carried enormous weight. "Then maybe it's time to decide what matters more. Everything you've built on conquest, or something new you could build on connection." Rena stared at his outstretched hand as though it were a weapon more dangerous than any she'd faced. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and placed her purple fingers against his palm. The touch sent electricity through both of them, a bridge between two worlds. "If I choose you," she said quietly, "I become a traitor to my people. Or," Marcus replied, intertwining his fingers with hers, "you become the first Kalari to remember what it means to choose something because it's right, not because it's efficient." In that moment, with their hands joined and her defenses finally lowered, Commander Rena made a decision that would change the course of the war. She leaned down and pressed her forehead gently against his, a gesture of trust and affection that her people have forgotten centuries ago. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "I will stand before the High Council and defend you. But tonight, just for tonight, can we simply be Rena and Marcus?" "Nothing would make me happier," he replied. They stayed like that as the stars wheeled past the viewport, two souls from different worlds finding something neither had expected, a connection that transcended conquest, compassion that defied programming, and the beginning of something that terrified them both, precisely because it felt so undeniably right.
The Council's verdict. The High Council chamber was a vast semicircle of violet stone where 9 Kalari elders sat in judgment. Marcus stood in the center, energy restraints back on his wrists, while Rena faced her own people as both commander and defendant.
You have violated 17 protocols, Elder Kane's voice echoed through the chamber. You've granted a prisoner unprecedented access, dismissed guards during private meetings, and now you defend him against execution. Explain yourself, Commander. Rena stood tall, her purple skin luminous under the chamber's harsh lights. I invoke my right as Fleet Commander to claim Lieutenant Reed as a strategic asset. His knowledge of human psychology has proven invaluable. Invaluable, General Tavros scoffed, stepping forward. Or have you simply become compromised? The medical staff reported you spent 3 hours in his recovery room alone. Is this strategic necessity or personal weakness? Careful, General, Rena's voice carried, warning. The question stands, Elder Kane interjected. Has this human contaminated your judgment? Marcus watched Rena's internal struggle play across her features. She could lie, claim pure strategic interest, and possibly save them both. Or she could tell a truth that might destroy her. He has changed my perspective, Rena said finally, her silver eyes meeting Marcus's across the chamber. He saved my life during the rebel attack. He showed me that connection between species isn't weakness, it's possibility. The chamber erupted in outrage. Elder Kane raised his hand for silence. Then you admit to emotional compromise, the very thing our ancestors engineered away to make us superior. Perhaps they were wrong, Rena said quietly, and the chamber fell deathly silent. Perhaps eliminating emotion didn't make us superior, it made us incomplete. Heresy, Elder Kane declared. Commander Rena, you leave us no choice. Both you and the human are sentenced to exile. You will be stripped of rank and abandoned on the nearest habitable world, never to return to Kalari space. Rena's bioluminescent patterns dimmed with shock, but Marcus saw something else in her expression. Relief. I accept the Council's judgment, she said. The transport pod descended through purple-tinged clouds toward the planet designated as their exile. Marcus sat beside Rena, now dressed in simple civilian clothing rather than her commander's armor, watching her process the loss of everything she'd known. Do you regret it? He asked softly. She was quiet for a moment. I should. I've lost my command, my position, everything I spent decades building. She turned to meet his eyes. But when I look at you, I feel something my people forgot how to feel. Hope. The pod landed on a verdant world with violet grass and twin moons visible in the amber sky. As they stepped out, Marcus took her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate to hold his. So what now? Rena asked, surveying their new home. Now we build something new, Marcus replied, not through conquest, through choice. She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. The Council may have meant this as punishment, but perhaps they've given us the greatest gift, freedom. Freedom to be who we want, Marcus agreed, pulling her close. Not who we were engineered or trained to be. As the twin moons rose over their new world, Rena pressed her lips to his in a kiss that bridged species and defied empires. In choosing each other, they'd lost everything their worlds valued. But in return, they'd found something infinitely more precious, a love that proved connection was stronger than conquest, and that sometimes the bravest act wasn't fighting for your people, but choosing to become something entirely new. Far above, both Kalari and human ships received encrypted messages, the beginning of a peace negotiation, sparked by two exiles who dared to see past their differences. Their story had just begun. The end.